Yeah, but you weren't recording earlier, man, because that was pretty hilarious.
Yes, it would have been hilarious. Welcome to Oh Brother News, where me and James talk about the latest shit in politics. Okay, cool.
We got music.
We got music. We're fancy now. Okay, so let's just jump back in where we were talking before starting recording. There was an article in the Atlantic about Trump, Ukraine, Russia. Um, James, take it from there.
Yeah, article was basically stating, this is the very Cliff Notes version. Cliff Notes version is, if Trump decides to cut off Ukraine, Ukraine probably can't go 2 years, without the U.S. support. And Russia, you know, they they have years worth of disposable people to keep throwing at the problem, and they could probably outlast Ukraine. And Gabe was talking about well, I mean, if they ran out of ammunition, if they didn't have any weapons coming from the U.S., would you really think they would be able to hang on? And I'm still cautiously optimistic that Ukraine would be able to withstand them or outlast them at least. I don't I don't see Russia going 2 more years like they've been doing, and people just still going along with that without the Russian economy collapsing on itself and everything else. And I personally don't think they can go that much longer. I don't think they could go 2 more years. Granted, Ukraine's been doing great, in part because they've been getting weapons and they're able to do this attrition and really just rack up the losses on the Russia side, even if they're not gaining ground or anything. They're losing ground steadily, but they're inflicting such big losses. And Gabe mentioned that you really think they'd be able to last and outlast Russia even with no weapons? Which led me to a funny. Well, it's not funny depending on who you ask. If you ask North Korea, it's not funny at all. But in Kursk, in Kursk, where Ukraine's have their little offensive on the east, the northeast side of Kursk, the mechanized infantry of Ukraine, we're going up against thousands of meat soldiers just going in there to keep storming on foot against the mechanized units of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian mechanized units ran out of ammunition, and and they proceeded to take more ground from the North Koreans because even though they had no ammunition, they had armored Stryker vehicles from the U.S. with no more ammunition in them, and they proceeded to run them all over. And the North Koreans didn't have, any anti-tank weapons. They just had small arms fire and people with machine guns, and the Ukrainians ran them all over and took more ground, even after they ran out of ammo. So there's still hope. Granted, they can't always be like a video game, just running people over. But it was
Yeah,
a
I mean
pretty
that
good
is.
video. It's a pretty wild video. If you search out the video, you can see it in Ukraine. Is Stryker vehicles, Ukrainian troops and Stryker vehicles,
I'm gonna have to look for that later.
running them over in mass.
I mean that is heartening and hilarious. I guess depending on what side of that conflict you are, whether you're on the good side or the bad side.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that I would have said that you missed was that um, for like Trump is kind of in a pickle because um, he basically promised that he was going to negotiate an end to the conflict that he assumed would be something like some of Ukraine will remain and there will be some kind of demilitarized zone and peacekeeping troops, and Russia will get the rest, some amount of Ukraine will become Russian territory. And that is under the assumption that Putin has to negotiate. And with all the things that Putin stands to gain, kind of like uh, breaking up America's influence in NATO and taking over all of Ukraine. And his goal all along has been to completely remove the language and the culture identity of Ukraine and just make it all Russian. And you can see that in the way that like everything is, people are tortured and silenced if they have any sort of support for Ukraine and all of the occupied territories already. That's totally his plan. So in order for there to be like a negotiation of any kind, Putin has to be willing to negotiate. And Putin's at least 2 years away from willing to negotiate because of the amount of economic hit he can continue to take, the wartime economy, the number of bodies that they can throw, because that's kind of Russia's strategy, is just to like throw bodies, like trade bodies for bullets until you're out of bullets, and then come kill you after you're out of ammo. Um, and they got at least 2 more years of gas for that strategy in the tank. So Ukraine probably does not, unless America provides another aid package. And Trump, has been against giving aid packages and talking about how he's going to give this quick, easy solution, which he's totally not going to be able to deliver on. So it really puts him in a pickle where, like, Putin can just fuck him over and keep on. So he's going to have to either like actually be a strong man the way he pretends to be, or take a big L on Ukraine. So it's really it's going to be a big issue for him pretty quickly.
See, and I don't think Trump thinks of it as a big issue. I think Trump, I mean, here, if nothing else, I mean, all this stuff about the U.S. taking over Greenland and Panama and everything else, you know, there's one thing, if you know anything at all about Trump, if anybody has remembered or learned anything over the last 10 years, it's that whatever anybody thinks will hurt Trump, it doesn't really matter to him because there's always the next day's story to make everybody talk about something else. And people forget. So let's say he does decide to roll over on Ukraine. Okay, well, that'll be one debacle that people are mad about. But the very next day, if we're talking about going to war with Greenland and Denmark, I think people will drop that story because the next big shiny object will be in their way. And if that doesn't work, then there'll be something else. So I don't really think Trump cares about Ukraine. I don't think he cares about anything. He cares about himself. If Russia could help him in any way, if he thinks that Russia's, in a position to do something for him, then he'll help them. If he thinks that Russia can't really do anything for him, then maybe he has no allegiance to anybody. I mean, who knows? I mean, he has appointed some halfway decent people to be the envoys in Ukraine, and it would benefit Trump. The way Trump likes to work is let somebody else handle it. Okay, this general's going to handle it. He's going to be the envoy to Ukraine. He's going to handle it. And if that guy does good, then he can take credit for it. And if that guy does bad, then Trump's not to blame. It's that guy's fault. That's how Trump has always worked. So I don't know. Nobody knows. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gut feeling has always been that he's going to roll over on Ukraine because him and everybody else has always, talk shit about Ukraine, and talk shit about Zelensky and everything else. But at the same time, he was doing that with Kim Jong Un for a year and a half until they fell in love. And then Fox News and everybody got right in line with him. And, oh, look at that. He's doing so great with North Korea. I mean, after a year and a half of talking about fire and fury and destroying and having World War III with North Korea, then no, now they're in love. So who knows?
So on the topic of Panama and Greenland, I mean, I guess I'll say, like, explain a little bit, but then do you think that these are, serious pursuits, or do you think that they're kind of like a distraction, setting the vibe kind of thing for, um, setting up for, like, well, it's okay if Russia wants to be imperial and take over Ukraine and take over Poland, and we shouldn't help NATO defend. If he wants to take
Could
Europe, we should
be.
let him. Because, like, we want to take Panama and we want to take Greenland. Is he just kind of setting the stage for imperialism being okay because, like, and we're doing it too? Or do
I
you
mean, he's
think that he's seriously wants to pursue these things? And, like, is there a reason? Where are these things coming from? What is he talking about with those things?
well, Greenland has been a thing that people have been talking about for decades. A little bit. I mean, they're not. No one's been suggesting going to war with Denmark over Greenland until Trump. But the U.S. has, on many occasions, I mean, going back a lot of presidents, have talked about the possibility of acquiring Greenland. And with climate change and the ice caps melting and everything else, it is like red hot property to own because it's all melting away. Once it all melts away, That is some fast shipping lanes right north over there and right to China, stuff like that. So once you get rid of all the ice, that's money. So people have been talking about it more and more. Trump has been talking about it for 6 years, or 5 years. So I don't think he's totally just. I can't imagine us going to war with Denmark, but at the same time, it would track with him wanting to be, a little dictator like everybody else and just expanding everything and taking over all the stuff to. I mean, like, look at Jackson. He always talks about Andrew Jackson. He talks about these other presidents, and they're known for big things like the Louisiana Purchase, expanding the U.S., making it so big. Same thing Putin wants to do. He wants to bring back all the territory from what the Soviet Union had. Trump probably thinks in his head, man, if I could double the size of the U.S., I would go down in history as like one of the greatest presidents. I'd be on Mount Rushmore. You know, he probably does think that way. I mean, and and he has a Republican Congress. You need Congress to go to war. Do you think Republicans would? I don't know. I don't know, man. I think they've proved that they will blindly follow anything he wants to do for the most part. And even if he was talking about the Democrats will lead you down World War III, they're warmongers. Once the second he's not even in office yet, and he's already proposing going to war with our allies to take over, big parts of the world. Um, it just goes to show that they don't mean anything they say. But there's not really a point to it. It's just like Trump. I mean, I don't know. There's probably a marble bouncing around in his skull, with an idea. I don't think it's going to come to fruition. I have to think there's at least 3 Republicans in the House and a handful of senators who will say no. Let's not go to war with NATO and, and Panama. I would just think that. I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure Lisa Murkowski, the dude from Utah, and Susan Collins of Maine, even though she'd be very concerned about it, I don't think they would support a war against Denmark and Panama. So,
Well, what about annexing Canada? The 51st state.
well, I think Canada would have a say in it, and I don't think they want to do that either. And I think the same handful of Republicans that would say no to war with Denmark and Panama would probably say no to war with Canada too.
I just can't imagine that you would try to make all of Canada a single state. Like
Well, no,
that's I
the
think
reason
that's
for
the
that.
craziest.
The funny thing is, they were talking about this on Fox and Friends, man. Fox and them. They were talking about that with Jesse Waters. His little stupid guy.
Oh
On
God.
Fox. They actually decided that it shouldn't be one state. Because if it's one state, it'll be a Democratic state, and they wouldn't want to give that 2 seats to. They were actually talking about this. They
Two
wouldn't
two
want.
Senate seats, and how many
They wouldn't give
how
Senate.
many it
They'd
would be
give 2 Senate.
so many House seats also.
Well, not necessarily, but
Well, those
either
are by
way, they were talking.
population, so
Either way, they were
it's
talking about it. They said they wouldn't make it one state because it'd be a Democratic state, and so they did propose 2 states. They'd be like one liberal state and one Republican state. You know. Yeah, but that's not going to happen. It's just stupid. Hopefully, if nothing else,
like it's slightly
he,
more people than California.
yeah. But hopefully, people realize. Wait a second. They were all acting like we don't want to go to war, and hey, we were talking about bringing grocery prices down, and hey, we thought Trump would be good for X or Y, and obviously he's not delivering that. It's just doing what he always does, serving up distraction after distraction, news story after news story for people to talk about, to always forget about the last thing and always be focused on the new shiny object in front of them because it's something Trump's talking about. He does this all the time.
Yeah, the
People
flooding
forgot the
strategy.
first 4 years, man. The first 4 years, every other day, it was something else that was stupid. And at the end of the 4 years, there was just so much stupid that people couldn't remember half of it. They only remembered that, wow, COVID's killing everybody and everything's locked down and our economy sucks, and then they got rid of them. And then they all forgot about how bad it was. And now we're just going back into it. So I don't think it's going to happen with. I don't think anything's going to happen with Panama. I don't think anything's going to happen with Greenland. I don't think we're going to roll over on Ukraine. I'm cautiously optimistic that when Putin doesn't have any interest in negotiating, he will look like an idiot if he just. He will really. He already. Everybody knows he's Putin's bitch, right? And it always kind of grates on him a little bit, right? I think if it's so obvious and he has somebody else in charge of Ukraine, so he doesn't really take the blame because he has his envoys and his other people, running the stuff with Ukraine and the military and these guys and the advisors, and they all want to support and arm Ukraine to keep from Russia from rolling over. I kind of think he'll go along with it just because, if nothing else, it's the more popular, you know, opinion. And besides, he wants to have his whole immigration stuff. I think he'll focus a lot more on deporting people and everything else, and not really care about Ukraine. I hope that's the best case scenario for Ukraine.
Yeah,
That's what I
but
think.
I mean, if he does nothing, they're gonna lose, and Russia's gonna take over the entire country. There will be no more Ukraine.
I don't think they're going to. I don't think they'll do nothing. I think they'll just kind of keep on arming them, sending them stuff, and
Well, I mean, like they can't because they're gonna have to give them. I mean, for one, there's like 6.8 billion in aid that was uh, whatever was part of the last funding bill
mm-hmm,
under Biden that still hasn't been sent to them. So like, he has a few days left to send them that aid that was already appropriated, or it's just going to be up in smoke. Um, and then Trump would have to start putting together a spending package in the next couple months in order for it to get passed and be there in time for it to make enough of a difference. So it's going to be a very imminent decision for him, and it's not going to be. It's either going to be do nothing and Ukraine's on borrowed time and is going to be completely gone, or do something and push back against Putin. So he's either going to have a loss or a loss. He's just got to kind of pick his poison. The other thing too that makes that even more likely is that um, the political stuff that's happening in France and Germany, where they're both kind of leaderless for the next like 3 to 6 months because of I can't remember the complexities of both of those governments, but I know like Germany has to elect a new government because they've done a vote of no confidence on the current one, and
mm-hmm.
then it's like they can't do it until June or something like that. So they're kind of a rudderless ship until then. And France is a similar situation that I don't know the details of.
I'm
Uh,
reading an article here on CNN, by the way, and today they announced another 500 million, right, of the Presidential Drawdown Authority from the current U.S. stocks.
yeah,
So
that's from the 6.8 bit. That was
no,
today
no,
though,
it's not.
500 million.
Yeah, another 500 million from the Presidential Drawdown Authority. That's not the same as the other stuff, right? Presidential Drawdown Authority says that's where you say, hey, out of the current stocks, we're just going to take this from the U.S. and give it to them now, right? That is
No,
in
yeah,
addition.
that's what most of the appropriations was from the
That's
last. It was
outside the
like it was restocking it.
yeah. It says this is outside that. It says they said all the remaining money that has been appropriated by Congress for Ukraine is expected to be provided. That does not mean, however, all the presidential drawdown authority for Ukraine will be used by the time he leaves office. Different things, technically,
I see.
because they have money that's appropriated. If it's appropriated, it's already accounted for. This is going to them here. Presidential drawdown authority is above and beyond it. The president's allowed to, for whatever use, like he's using it for Ukraine, but you could use it for anything. You could say, "Hey, there's a situation in
Wherever we got to send
Thailand,
him some tanks.
Right now, or Israel, or they need some missiles right now, and Congress, sorry, we don't got time for you. I'm using my presidential drawdown authority to give them $500 million of our stuff,
Well, they
and
did
boom,
literally do that with
yeah,
Israel
yeah, I
several
know,
times
yeah, but
recently.
yeah, but so it looks like they're going to get all the rest of the stuff there. They've been racing to try and get it in the last couple months. In the last couple months, in the last few months, they got more. Ukraine got more shit in the last few months than they got like for the first 8 months or the 9 months of the year. So, which is good, you know. But yeah, I don't know if that pace will continue. I think they'll get more stuff. They'll get more money. I don't think it'll be at the levels they've been getting, which sucks because the levels they've been getting has been enough to keep them from being taken over.
Lose slowly.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you want to put it. Think about it this way: if you have a real war, right? If you're having a big war, if we, you never know what could have been, right? It could have been. It could have gone a few different ways, right? We kept slowly increasing what we give them, and we kept very slowly giving them more stuff, and slowly. Okay, now we'll give you tanks. All right, now we'll give you the longer missiles. Okay, now we'll give you a little bit longer missiles. Okay, now we'll give you this. You know what I mean? They kept slowly increasing the levels of stuff they're getting, slow enough that it was never like a big escalation, which I know a lot of people say. I've gone the other way too. I would have liked to have seen a different approach, but you never know how the other approach could have went. If the other approach was right off the bat, right from the jump, we're like, all right, we're giving them nukes, we're giving them F-16s, we're giving them everything, the best stuff we got, we're sending everything, we're gonna arm them to the teeth, right off the bat. And it's like, holy shit, an overwhelming amount of shit all at once. Maybe Putin might have used the nuke. You never know. I don't think so, but it may have been. And if it's it's like it could be like the frog in the pot of water. I think that's the approach that the Biden administration used. Like, hey, if we go too fast and overwhelmingly support them, I think everybody knows we could destroy Russia, right? Our military arsenal is so much better than theirs, right? If we would have just immediately unleashed that and given it to Ukraine and let them just go nuts, right? Russia would have gotten embarrassed quick, right? And maybe they would nuke and do other things or chemical attacks and everything else. I mean, they've done it in other countries. I mean, so you never know, right?
Yeah, but I
And
think
this
they
would,
were embarrassed pretty quickly just by what happened. They came in expecting to just roll it
yeah,
over and put
yeah,
in a puppet government right away, and
hmm
Ukraine was like, actually, go fuck yourself.
yeah. It was close. It was close calls, though, man. Honestly, it that first week or two, there was also a lot of luck involved with the Ukraine. I mean, the Ukrainians were fucking great. They're brilliant. You know what I mean? But there
Well,
was
there were a
some
lot
luck.
of there's a lot of bad decisions
A
with
lot of bad decisions
Ukraine,
on Russia.
and
Well, yeah, there
there's
was bad decisions on Ukraine too. But I mean, Russia had worse decisions, and there was a lot of
like
luck
like
involved.
for example, like one of the bad decisions out of Ukraine was before the invasion. Zelensky decided to demine the space from Crimea into the rest of mainland. Like Russia had already occupied Crimea, so like, why do you pull up those mines when you're already?
Did Zelensky order that, or
Yeah,
well, I don't know. How much
yeah.
in advance of that?
I don't,
Was it after that?
I
Was
don't
it
know.
after? Well, I mean, because it depends. It really depends. Was it after the Minsk Accords? Would have made sense if it was then. Granted, a couple years later after the Minsk Accords, you kind of saw that it was stupid and toothless and it meant nothing. But timing is kind of important. If it was 2 months before the invasion, I would say, yeah, that was really stupid. If it was when they got their ceasefire in Donbass and then before Russia started skirting that, it would have made more sense. But I don't know. I don't know enough about it. All I know is Ukraine got lucky. I think if Russia had gone in with double the troops it had, they probably would have been able to topple the government pretty quick. They went in with way too few troops. They got stuck on that freaking highway from Belarus and lost all those people. I mean, they had a lot of bad luck and a lot of stupid decisions right off the bat. But yeah, I don't know. Either way, it's like the frog. Like I said, though, it's like the frog in the pot of water. We've been letting Russia be the frog in the water, thinking it's doing all right, and they just keep slowly turning up the heat, to the point where now they have 800,000 casualties already. Russia does. I mean, that's a lot. You know, 2 more years of that. I mean, I don't know if Russia could handle that. I don't think they could. I mean, the ruble's at the worst it's ever been. The money's worthless. They're now bartering with other countries because they can't trade. They've used up their national reserve, their foreign reserves and currency. They've basically used all of it up now to try to keep inflation down. Their interest rates were
Yeah, but they're still producing bombs and bodies
not
to
nearly
throw
enough.
at it.
Not enough though. Not nearly enough to make up for what they're losing. You know, all the stuff they could produce in a year, they lose in a month. They don't have the stockpiles to keep going. They can't produce nearly enough. They're
I mean,
using mopeds. They're using
I'm not.
mopeds and bathtubs, literally mopeds with bathtubs now. To
They're
this is what
not. They're not losing at that pace. I mean, they're losing a lot of people, but they're not losing at a pace that is unsustainable for them because it's basically down to
no, they
trench
aren't.
warfare, and all of the territories that Russia has taken are mined in a very aggressive, very efficient. way. So like even if Ukraine like even if Russia just abandoned all of that territory and just ran back to Russia, Ukraine couldn't just rush in and occupy it immediately because it's mined and it's massive and it's destroyed. So like all they have to do is kind of keep on keeping on. They don't have to have the same like aggressive pushing burn rate that they have. They can, but they don't have to. Like to outlast Ukraine, they don't have to. And it's not just that. Like Trump is talking about, putting tariff pressure on all of these, um, on every single country. So like all of Europe is going to have tariff pressure, which is going to change, how attractive Russian gas looks, Russian oil looks to them.
Well, here's the thing. Think about it this way. In 2024, Ukraine, hey, the island we were talking about moving to, and when Trump won. In 2024, Russia gained in Ukraine an area twice the size of the island of Mauritius, which is about 5 New York cities. That's how much land they gained in 2024 for the whole year. In the whole year, they got 1,600
10,
miles.
10 New York cities.
No, five New York cities.
Okay, five.
5 New York cities. Yeah, 5 times the area of New York City. So they got 1,600 square miles total, which is very, very, very small. And in that time, they lost was it? Let's see, 400,000 soldiers, 400,000 people for a few cities worth of land. And most of it is not anything good land. It's just empty fields. The
No,
vast,
all of the major manufacturing centers, the mining, the steel production, the uh, factories, all that stuff is in eastern Ukraine, and a
yeah,
lot of that is in the Donbass and Luhansk region.
correct. But I mean, but the areas you're talking about in the Donbass, most of that stuff is a lot of it is the areas that Ukraine hasn't really had control over in many years. I'm just talking in the last few years here, since like 2022, right? They haven't really taken much. In the last year, they haven't taken much either. I mean, they haven't really got that much. Most of the land they took was, I mean, they did destroy a couple cities. They did take a couple like settlements that were completely moon rock by the time they took it over, and they took over a lot of fields and some tree lines. A lot of fields and tree lines. But when you're losing for every for every 500 miles, if you're losing 100,000 soldiers, there's no way they could keep up that pace. It would take them at this pace, at the pace they're going in 2024. It will take them 30 years at that pace to get to Kiev.
Yeah, but it won't because I mean
I know they. I know.
Russia has 200 million people. Ukraine before the war,
Yeah.
like go back to 2014, it was 40 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the war started, for one, you lost all of Crimea, you lost a bunch of Donbass, then a bunch of people left. You know, that's estimated somewhere between like 6 and 10 million people
Yeah.
that left between 2014 and 2022. And then since then, we don't have numbers, but like a lot of people have died,
Yeah.
and a lot of people have left. And
Yeah.
there's been a lot of like, you know, corruption around like, oh, you can get a pass from, getting conscripted. You can, oh,
I
I
mean,
guess your foot is just so broken. Or, you know what I mean? A lot of people who don't want to go and who are finding ways to not go, and a lot of corruption around who's going and how resources are being appropriated, and a lot of really questionable decisions from Zelensky's government and from the
in the military in
military,
general, it's
and
mainly
a
from the
lot of
military in general. Yeah. I mean,
and a lot of the that military also has, especially like the guy, who when he replaced the commander a while ago. Um,
Sersky.
yeah,
Solution with
the
Sersky.
the guy that he put in there, was trained in by Russia
The Soviets. Yeah.
before.
Yeah. He
Yeah,
was in
so
Soviet work on that point,
he had a
but
lot
he's
of that
not.
same style of just like
He's not
trade
though. He's
bodies for
really not though.
bullets.
He's really not though. Sersky has proven that he's not like that. That was the big reputation he had, especially after Bakhmut. But that I would not put that on Sersky, even though Sersky's the one who really got blamed. They called him the butcher of Bakhmut, right?
Yeah.
It really wasn't his call. That was really Zelensky's call. Zelensky, it became a symbol. Bakhmut became a symbol instead of a city, right? Instead of just a little strategic thing, it became a symbol of, hey, look at this. We're not, it's a fortress. It's a fortress, Bakhmut, It was stupid, really. But, I mean, and they did put Russians through the meat grinder there. I mean, yes, they lost a lot of troops, but they killed a lot more Russians. And if you're really trying to do a war of attrition, that is kind of the strategy. And since then, though, Sersky really has been really doing the depth and defense stuff. We're not going to sit here and just sacrifice our people for nothing. They will play to their strengths. When they have like a 5 or 6 to 1 kill advantage, they'll take it. When they start getting encircled, they'll move back. They'll take the high ground. They'll move back. They'll keep steadily losing land, but slowly, but inflict a lot of losses on Russia, and that's been their strategy. So he's proven not to be the Soviet just keep going forward, never surrender, stay here till the last person dies, and if you try to surrender, we're going to kill you. He hasn't turned out to be that. I mean, and they've done so much more with drones and everything else. I mean, they really are transforming the military. I mean, it's not instant, and there's a lot of things that sucks, man, about their military. Like here, and I can't blame either Sersky or Zelensky for this. A lot of it just has to do with their whole conscription policy and their government, like their constitution and everything. When when the war started, and they're like, we need everybody to protect our country. People came out in droves, man, women, men, everybody, young, old, everybody pitching in. Everybody, well, a lot of people left. Then a lot of people did leave. What really sucks is there are more Ukrainian men who left Ukraine than Ukrainian men in their military. You know what I mean? I mean, how many
Oh yeah.
refugees there are. But at the same time, the thing that sucks about it is all these people signed up to join, and they didn't realize at the time that, hey, since we're in war, and the way our conscription policy, our military thing is, and since we're in a time of war, there is no out. There was no policy for how are we going to rotate troops in and out of combat. There are people who are just been sent to the front lines, man. They've been on the front lines for 2.5 years.
Well, there are people who've been on the front line since 2014.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and there's no rotation policy, and that's a problem with their constitution and the government and everything else. That goes way beyond Zelensky or Syrski. Granted, they haven't fixed it still, which is on them. But at the same time, when it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, man. What are they supposed to do? They already know they have a huge manpower shortage. They already know they're outnumbered, 5 to 1, right? Everywhere, right? Are you really supposed to say, okay, we gotta get half of our people off the front lines when you already know that you really can't afford to take everybody off the front lines, and you really don't have 20 more battalions of troops ready to swap them out with. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of a hard decision to make. You know that you have to do something, but at the same time, what do you do? It's kind of like, I mean, here at support, where we work, if we're on a day where we only have 5 people, say we only have 5 people for the whole week, and it's really, really, really busy, and we're like, man, people are burning out. Well, what are you going to do, man? You don't have anybody else. You gotta just say, shit. All right. Well, hopefully they don't burn out because we need them, and that's kind of the situation they're in. It's kind of you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. What are they supposed to do? I don't have a good solution for them. I mean, the U.S. keeps saying they need to lower their conscription policies, start taking all the young people too. You know, which sounds good, but at the same time, they have people in these other battalions they're training up that don't have weapons anyway. There's not enough military weapons to go around for all the people they have it as it is. So does it really matter if they have another million troops, 2 million troops? How many more millions of troops without weapons would it matter? They don't got
Well,
the
that's part of
weapons.
the point is that they got to have the weapons.
Exactly. So
But there has been,
there's a lot of
uh,
problems. We got a lot
you
of
know,
problems.
in
Yeah.
talking to the Ukrainians that I know, there's a lot of stories of people being sent under equipped or as
Oh
soon as they
yeah.
get to the front line under trained,
Oh yeah.
and they're just sent off to go do something that's pointless, like go take that hill with no guns and no experience
Yeah.
and no, what's it going to change? Nothing. Get up there, eat those bullets. Like there's been a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't
I
know.
mean,
So I
I
think Trump's
know.
in a pickle. I think Ukraine's definitely uh, in an increasingly bad situation.
Yeah.
Um, let's switch to a fun topic.
Oh boy.
Um, rebranding moderation censorship in American social media.
When you said rebranding, I thought you were about to talk about the Gulf of America.
Well, oh yeah, God, the Gulf
Rebranding.
of America. Yes, it's one more of
Rebranding.
Trump's nonsense
Yeah, exactly.
news cycle captures.
I know.
He wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America.
America.
Um, yeah, so
Rebranding.
the thing I definitely want to say at the top of us talking about like social media and free speech, um, is this point that I don't see getting made enough, so I want to make it, and that is that uh, people will talk about not being able to say something on Facebook, or even something on Facebook that they want to say, or a person not being granted freedom of reach, being promoted by the algorithm or being demoted by the algorithm, even. And they'll call that a freedom of speech issue. And it is
Hmm.
absolutely not a free speech issue,
Yep.
because
Correct.
free speech
As government.
gives you the right to be free from the government restricting your speech
Yep.
if you're a citizen. So like a lot of like, actually, I was talking to my wife about this today, because I was like, immigrants don't have any of the rights, only citizens. And actually, that's not true. There are a bunch of rights that immigrants
Hmm.
do have, but the First Amendment in particular, while the amendment doesn't say specifically, there have been precedents set by Supreme Court decisions so that immigrants don't have quite the same version of the First Amendment that everyone else does. But regardless, okay, like freedom of speech does not mean that a newspaper has to publish whatever Jim Bob wants to say on the front page
Yeah.
or on any page. And it doesn't mean that the TV station does, or the radio station does, or the movie studio does, or the book publisher, or the magazine publisher,
Means you can't go to
or
jail for it.
social media.
Means you can't go to jail for saying something that's
Exactly. It means that the government can't, well, it also means like the government can't restrict Facebook, for example, from being able to publish content.
well. That's not. That's all. There's also limitations that they are allowed to do a little bit. The Supreme Court already ruled that in the Biden administration's favor for that, because they were trying to tell Facebook and these content, these media companies, hey, you gotta, they were trying to ask them to squash some of the stuff that was complete disinformation about it, and they
Well, they were. I
complied.
mean, they were asking, and there were some. I think like
Yeah,
the Hunter Biden laptop story was originally suppressed on Facebook and Twitter for a few
not at
months
the
around the
request,
election time.
and not at the request of the Biden administration. Do you know what the only request of Biden was?
I thought that was a direct request.
No, the only request was not to publish the dick pics. That
Oh,
was
well,
the only
that's
request about the
reasonable.
lifetime. They wouldn't say, "Hey, can you not publish a story?" They said, "Hey, can you not publish the naked pictures of the president's son?" That was
Well,
it.
that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that was it. That was the
I
only
mean,
request they
I
needed.
think that goes against their content policies anyway.
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, but this is the point that I feel like doesn't get made often enough, right? Is that like freedom of speech does not guarantee you access to any of these platforms.
Yeah.
Not any kind of legacy media, not to be on television,
Yep.
certainly not to be on social media.
Yep.
And the thing that people are talking about there when they're talking about social media is not freedom of speech. It is freedom of reach. Freedom of reach is um, it's not a right. It's not in the Constitution, uh, and it's the idea that you have equal access as everyone else to being promoted by the algorithms, or having anything you say on a social media platform being accessible by anyone who might want to hear it. And that is not, and never has been, the case either. And like, I think a lot of their moderation was to say, well, this is factually inaccurate. Uh, we'll send you something else that's going to link you off to the truth somewhere else, as we've determined it, or as users have determined it, or to take, particularly inaccurate messages, or in the case of Facebook, to kick Trump off the platform after January 6th. Um, And I think all those things are just content moderation. But there's this Scott Galloway clip that's been going around the last couple days where he makes some really interesting points. So Mark Zuckerberg put out this video where he basically said Facebook is going to stop doing censorship. And again, this is like 4 years ago, we were calling it moderation. Now we're calling it censorship. Uh, and so they were taking their fact checkers. They were going to have no more fact checkers, and they're going to move the whole like security and compliance team, which does the fact checking, from California. So it's not West Coast elites. They're going to move it to Texas, and they spend about $5 billion a year on that team. And Scott Galloway was like, well, if you look at so they're going to save like $5 billion a year because people aren't going to move to Texas. They're going to quit, and they're going to fire a bunch of them because they're not going to have any fact checkers anyway. So they're going to save $5 billion a year. And if you look at the ratio of cost to market capitalization for Facebook, that's probably going to result in the valuation of Facebook going up by 120 to 150 billion with a B dollars. And Zuckerberg owns 14%. So Zuckerberg is going to make somewhere in the range of $20 billion by firing the fact checkers. And then when you think about how um, across a bunch of different industries, whenever the government starts putting out rumblings of like, oh, we're going to regulate this industry, those industries are motivated to and have very often done their own regulation. You see this with like the MPAA for movies. You see it with the ESRB for games. You see it with nutrition facts for food. It's not from the government. The food companies put their own shit together. That's why nutrition facts are bullshit. Um, so this is kind of the same thing. This is him like not pissing off the president further, like capitulating, making $20 billion in the process, and avoiding what would probably be a more onerous and restrictive, uh, government regulation. I think that it's a it's a very smart business move, especially if you're thinking like, well, Trump's lame duck. He's only got 4 years. Maybe in 3 years we do something different. See what the political climate is then. But at the same time, I think it's incredibly cowardly because, like, what is the point of being the third richest person in America or whatever he is? 200 billion something dollars that he has to his name. Like, what is the point of being that wealthy if when it comes down to it, you're not going to stand up and fight for something as important as speech.
Because he had no
And
morals to begin with, and it was after he was meeting with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and it was after his friend, the guy was jumping up on stage being an idiot, Dana White, the UFC CEO. You know,
he's joining the board
he's
of
more the
Meta.
board. Exactly. It's just they're all
But I
buddies
mean,
now.
all the CEOs going to Mar-a-Lago to like
Yeah,
to like talk to Trump. It's because they know that he will come after them if they don't,
yeah, exactly.
and like he will make
As it
things
is.
worse for their company if they don't. Like that's just fulfilling the fiduciary responsibility. I don't think you can see that as like a moral quandary. Like at least like going to kiss the ring. The same thing with like donating to uh, the the inauguration committee, which is just like, do you want to give Trump some money, like hand to hand, because a whole bunch of money from the last inauguration went missing. Uh, I don't know. I don't even see that as anything as like morally culpable, but I do think that like choosing to not fight, uh, and switching, just firing all the fact checkers and just completely giving up is pretty
Yeah,
cowardly bullshit.
yep, it is. But yeah. What are you gonna say, man?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's looking out for number one. Hey, Trump won, and he'll make me look bad, and you know, he's gonna sick his mob on us, and I don't want to deal with that. So cool, I'll just go along with whatever he wants for a few years
At the same time,
and make more money.
they're trying to get they're trying to get H-1B so they can hire the best people for AI,
It's not
and
that. That's not money.
they're trying to invest in nuclear power plants so that
That's,
they can have enough power to power the data centers.
that's not why they want H-1B workers anyway. They
Well,
want
I
they
think
want
that's.
H-1B workers because H-1B workers can't leave them.
I mean, you can go
It's like
to a
getting your
different
mail.
employer.
No, well, yeah, you have a month or two to get another employer if you leave. Otherwise, you get deported. It's kind of like getting a mail order bride who doesn't speak English and bringing her over here. That's what they want.
No,
That's what H-1B visas are.
it's kind of like if you're a top engineer at Google, Microsoft will pick you up. You know, those.
Most H-1B workers are not doing that kind of work. And the people in X, the number of people they have with H-1B visas, right? Or like Tesla, doesn't even come as like Tesla, right? Instead of X.
Hmm.
But Tesla, the amount of engineers that they got rid of and fired, right,
Hmm.
dwarfs what they have with H-1B visas coming in here. They had way more people. They have all the talent here in America they need. They want the people they can get cheaper who aren't going to be going and striking or doing anything to get fired because they need to have the job to stay in the country. They want compliant workers who are dependent on keeping the job to stay in the country. That's what they want. That's why they
Okay, so
want
wait,
H-1B workers.
back up a little bit. Just go. I know it's older news, but explain the whole uh, Musk, Vivek, H1B. Explain the whole shit show from the beginning, as if it's not week old news. In case someone listening, you know.
Hold on a second. I just noticed that my number one key is becoming an exclamation point, as if my shift key is held down, but it's not. And if I hold shift, I can't do anything. I can't type. It's weird. My keyboard's been acting really weird lately.
Very unfortunate. Still not newsworthy.
I know, but I was trying to Google something here because
Oh, I see.
to help with this, and yeah, thanks. When I scroll down, it goes sideways. When I click, everything gets linked. Uh, yeah. Anyway, yeah, H-1B visas. All right, so they Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, they say that American workers are retarded. I'm quoting them. Americans are retarded and lazy, and that's why they need people like Vivek Ramaswamy said. We need people with India's work ethic, you know, to come over here. And that's why we need H-1B visas because they're better than American workers. And yeah, so they want people to come over here, and now it's 65,000 people a year. That's how many total people come over on H-1B visas, right? Um, you can get an additional 20,000 for people with a master's degree or higher, right? Uh, Amazon is like the top company. It has just under 4,000 people total with H-1B visas, right? Cognizant, they have 2,800 people. There's a couple other companies. IBM has 1,300 people on H-1B visas. Microsoft has 1,200. Google has 1,058. Capgemini, we know from the McDonald's industry, they have 1,041 people on H-1B visas. Facebook has 920 people. Apple has 864 people. Intel has 851 people. Tesla had 742 people, right? 742 people total. Um, yeah, now Tesla before, they've never been in the top 25 companies in years. They've suddenly jumped to number 16 after firing tons of people in America because, they wanted unions and they wanted rights and they wanted better conditions and safety things that Tesla keeps failing at. And fires all these Americans and brings in a few hundred people from out of the country. Uh, but yeah, they're claiming that they need these workers to come here because they're better than Americans. Basically, it's a small number of people, but they want them because H-1B visa holders, the company sponsors them to come over here. Company sponsors them. Company says, "Hey, we need them to work here." Government says, "All right, you got these good skills. This company wants to sponsor you. You can come on over to the U.S. as long as you're working there. As long as they're going to sponsor you." And they really can't leave. They if they do leave, they have a 2-month window to have another job lined up. They typically don't leave the country that sponsored them. You know, it's not indentured servitude because they're getting paid, but they're usually getting paid less than the American workers that they would be doing the work for.
So part of the appeal there is that, um,
They're grateful to come
you
over
know,
here.
for an immigrant, when you're coming
A
from
real
another
poor,
country, looking
yeah,
at America, many times,
Mhm.
it's a big opportunity,
Yeah,
and a
and to
lot
get
of
your
times
family over. Mhm.
uh, with the valuation of the dollar to a
Mm-hmm.
local currency,
Send money back.
you know, even if they're making $100,000, so well, $100,000, if you're an American, you think, well, that's not that much money, you know, like it's good money, but you know, it's not, you know, you're not taking a lot of trips, you're not paying off all of your student loans, you're not, you know what I mean? It's not like you're super rich and super comfortable instantly. You still got to kind of pay attention and take things at a certain pace, especially if you're living in a place that's got a high cost of living, as a lot of these places with these tech jobs do. So for these people, one, it's like an opportunity, and they come in with this awareness that this is a big opportunity and that this place is going to give them a leg up that they wouldn't have had if they had stayed wherever they came from. And at the same time, a lot of times even making only like 100K, that's enough for them to like live with roommates, work long hours, keep their costs of living low, and then send a bunch of money back home where maybe they can retire their parents or, you know, cover medical bills or get people out of debt and that's all that sort of stuff. So like sending money back home, it becomes like the 100K goes a lot further uh, when you're willing to do that. And I think that's a piece of like there is a very real sentiment that like yes, there is absolutely like an exploitative, like, well, we can kind of hold them hostage and treat them worse because you know they're not going to try to unionize or whistleblow or you know rock the boat when they're kind of in this country dependent on this job that maybe they can get somewhere else, maybe they can't. That's totally a piece of it, but there is another piece of it which is like the immigrants just work harder, man. Like immigrants come in with the mindset of like, I have this big opportunity and I'm going to make the most of it. And they do a lot of the things that we don't want to do and they succeed in ways that we very often don't. And a lot of that is mindset and this idea of like this is an opportunity and I have to make the most of it. And that is a big cultural difference. Like there is a very real point there. You know, like every Ukrainian that I know has a similar story. They came here with a couple $100. They did shitty jobs for long hours. Oftentimes they got fucked over. It was hard because they didn't have documents or they didn't have full documents. Uh, and they solved all those issues while paying a shitload of money to the government for immigration status update stuff because our immigration is just costly and horrific if you're trying to become a citizen. Uh, and then they've built businesses or built careers in a way that like you know is not nearly as common among just citizens of America. So like there is a very real point that like Elon and Vivek have about the value of immigrant workers.
Yeah, but I
All
got
right, what do
nothing
you
back.
think about the or do you have anything more on that stuff?
No, not really.
What do you think about the fires in California
Fire.
and fire and the propensity for Trump to be punitive to California and Gavin Newsom, which
Well, it depends. Have they been raking the floor?
have they been have they been cleaning the forests?
Yes, I've been raking the floors of the forests. Because
Oh God, I forgot about that dumb shit.
yeah, because that's all they need to do. Donald Trump knows more about firefighting than any of the firefighters. Remember, everybody,
That's
you
right, he
need to rake
does.
the floor of the forests. Um, I think that. I mean, here it's fires are going to happen in the West and California. They always do. They're always going to happen. Donald Trump's going to be a dick. It's going to happen. Now there's still 11 days before Trump takes office. I think they'll get their aid after Trump takes office. Of course, he's going to try to send demands and screw them over. And hey, you need to help get rid of all these immigrants if you want any aid. And it'll go back and forth in the courts. And California's going to take care of California, man. That's what I
Mm, I see.
think. That's what I think. But
Heard some really bad stuff about California firefighters. Like the California took, I think, $23 million away from the state budget for firefighters, and they put that into the budget of, or no, I think it was $123 million. It was like 20 or $120 million. I can't remember what the story I saw was. But they took that money and they put it into the budget for the police in California, which brought their budget to like 2.1 billion with a B dollars.
okay,
Um, and then a lot of the firefighting that happens in California is done by
prisoners.
inmates,
Yeah,
and the inmates
it's a good
like
program. It's a
are
really good
paid
program.
very little, and they when they come out they don't even get a certification for the firefighting work they did while they were inmates, and they can't just go get a job as a firefighter.
I don't think that's 100% true.
No.
No, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, so that's, I haven't fact checked it, but that's the story that I saw
No, they
recently.
they do the firefighting. In fact, there's a whole TV show that's been going around. That's all popular about it. But actually, no. That was actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was a Kamala Harris thing, um, a really big initiative, and actually, it's been incredibly successful as far as having the prisoners actually have a sense of purpose, and the prisoners who do the firefighting work. Um, Now, it's kind of like a privilege. It's weird, They got a sense of purpose. They're not just sitting in prison. They're able to go, visit their families and stuff like that, and see things like there's been prisoners who do this program. They get monitored and everything else, but they get a little bit more freedom because they have to be on good behavior to be trusted to go out and about. And even though they're monitored and everything else, they're doing the job. And they really are fighting fires and big fires and stuff like that, right? Um, it's almost like a point of pride for those prisoners, right? And a lot of the prisoners have said that themselves. It's like, yeah, you could just be in prison, and then you can tell your family members, yeah, I'm in prison, or you could tell your family members, I'm a firefighter. You know,
Mm,
and
yeah.
it actually makes them feel better. And like the recidivism rate of the prison populations when they've been the ones doing the firefighting, it's like next to nothing. It's very low. It's very very low. Um, I thought they do get like certifications or something like that. Like it's like community. It's almost considered like community service, like something like that. I remember. God, I didn't know that was on the agenda to talk about. We can look into that.
Oh, I just pitched it at the end. I know we only got
But
about 10 more minutes left, so we
yeah,
gotta.
wildfires continue to destroy Los Angeles. Now up to hundreds of prison inmates to slow the spread. 800 prisoners battling to save Los Angeles. Yeah, they employ 3,100 inmates.
I think that's a great program so long as they treat the guys right.
Yeah, and yeah, it's been actually, yeah, it's a third of the firefighters basically are inmates. So it makes sense to take away a little bit of budget to give it this because they do have a successful program. Um, yeah, the pay scale was doubled in 2023.
I don't know, man. I can't see taking any money out of the budget for firefighting in California, given that they have such a wildfire problem every year.
Oh my god, it's still so cheap. Jesus Christ, I didn't realize how little they got paid for that.
How little are they getting paid?
Well, what do you think the maximum amount of money they get in a day for battling fire all day?
$30.
Wow, you are a liberal. $10.24.
Jesus Christ.
That's the maximum they will receive in a day of
Yeah,
their.
I think that I think that's a huge issue. Like we don't have time to talk about it. I haven't researched it, but like that's
Yeah,
slave labor. That's total
yeah,
bullshit.
yeah. They doubled the pay rate, in 2023. That's why they're getting that much money now.
Wow.
The incarcerated firefighters have some of the highest injury rates among all prison workers, and they're 4 times more likely to sustain injuries compared to other firefighters.
You
Probably because of less
think?
training and things like that. They work the longest hours. They have the hardest tasks. They don't shoot the water hoses. Instead, they use powered chainsaws and manual hand tools such as axes with the goal of starving the fires of fuel to continue the burn. So, like, they'll be the ones out
Mm,
there, like, so the fire spreading through the forest, hey, get out there, prisoner, start cutting all these trees down. That way the fire, when it gets here, it can't spread,
Yeah.
which is a lot harder than just shooting it with the water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, they've been, let's see here, hand crews. I'm trying to look at the things there. I thought they actually, yeah, 30% of the wildfire workforce is inmates.
What percent?
30%.
30%. Yeah. Okay. That was what the story I said.
Yeah. Hmm. Wow. During the most recent U.S. election, California voters rejected Proposition 6, a ballot measure that would have banned forced labor in state prisons. Only a handful of states have ever abolished forced prison labor: Colorado, Vermont, Nebraska, Utah, Alabama, surprisingly, Oregon, and Tennessee. That's it. Those are the only states that don't make prisoners forced labor. Wow.
Yeah.
But I
It's another one
could have
of
sworn
those
I could have sworn though I
Jim
read before
Crow
though.
holdovers.
I could have sworn though I read before though that there's some changes when Kamala was there that actually gave them more like stuff, or um,
Maybe it was just something that was pitched, or
is
maybe
there a
you're just not
connection?
finding it, looking for it right now.
Uh, I don't know. I'll talk about that later. I went dead air.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So stuff we didn't get to, maybe we talk about next time is Trump's sentencing, which is coming up pretty soon, I think.
Oh wow, he's gonna be sentenced to nothing.
Oh man,
Yeah,
great.
and that's still enough to have him rush back to the Supreme Court. With which, by the way, he had a call with Alito. Right as he was you know uh, filing his emergency petition to the U.S. Supreme Court to stop this from being sentenced. Him and Alito had a big long talk, and during this talk, that definitely did not talk about this case. Definitely did not come up. So says Alito. He says he wasn't aware that Trump would even bother trying to appeal to the Supreme Court. But yeah, so he had a big long talk with Alito, and turns out that Trump is going to hire like Alito's staffers. So yay!
The Supreme Corrupt. Okay. Yeah, we can go into more detail
It
on that.
doesn't
Maybe
really
he'll be
matter what
sentenced by the
happens.
time we record next week.
Oh, bigger news though is Eileen Cannon. Did you hear what Eileen Cannon did? Like I think today or yesterday.
No, tell me.
All right, you know how she dismissed the case, right? Against the espionage case, the classified documents.
Remind me on behalf of the viewers who
Okay,
Eileen.
Eileen Cannon was the Trump appointed judge in a little area of Florida. And when the U.S. federal government was going after Trump, um, for violations of the Espionage Act, because he had, top secret nuclear secrets, in
In
his bathroom,
boxes in his
in his
bathroom
bathrooms and stuff like
in
that, and everywhere else, and
Mar-a-Lago, where
with audio
all
recordings
sorts
of
of
him
people
talking
are.
to people and reading this stuff to people who are not authorized and laughing about it, and saying, you know, I, admitting on tape that he's not allowed to read this to them because it's not declassified. That one. Anyway, he petitioned to make sure that his appointed judge could get the case, and where she held it up and kept getting reversed by the 11th Circuit because she kept doing favorable things for him, and things are out of her jurisdiction, out of her scope as a judge to help Trump, and then she ultimately dragged it on long enough and then just outright dismissed the case for no reason. So now when a judge dismisses a case, they are off the case. It is not her case. Period. So she has no jurisdiction for anything related to that case anymore. She's off of it. She dismissed it. It's no longer anywhere in her docket. Well, a couple of other people, a couple other cohorts that were wrapped up in the classified thing, they had other charges against them with a different court and everything else, Jack Smith stuff. They made a petition to her, which is way outside her jurisdiction, and for an emergency request to keep Jack Smith's report to Merrick Garland. The special counsel, U.S. law says special counsel. What does a special counsel has the authority to do? To write a report. To do anything, write a report and give it to the attorney general, or to prosecute people, right, with the consent of the attorney general.
Mm.
And since Trump, so they dismissed the case, and that case against Donald Trump is no longer going forward because Eileen Cannon dismissed it. While they're held up on appeals, now that Trump won the election, they're not going to move forward to try to keep prosecuting him as right as he's taking office. They did the next thing. Okay, well, I got to just issue my report, give it to the attorney general, and that's it. Well, she just announced an injunction against the attorney general of the United States on behalf of two people who were nowhere in her purview or her jurisdiction. They made a request of her to keep Jack Smith's report to Merrick Garland from being made public. So she ordered an
Wow.
injunction against the attorney general to keep, the attorney general of the United States from releasing his report from Jack Smith. That way, when Trump takes office, they can throw it away.
Wow. I
Yeah.
see. Great. Well, why would we punish people for things that they clearly want to do again?
Yeah. So she's probably going to be on the Supreme Court next year, 2 years from now.
Oh, so that Twinkledee and Tweedledum can
Yeah.
retire?
Yeah. Let Clarence Thomas or somebody retire, or Alito, and they'll replace her with Eileen Cannon, who had no qualifications to be a judge, and then just did a whole bunch of illegal things that got overturned by the appellate courts over and over again because she was illegally acting to benefit Donald Trump, and then he'll put her on the Supreme Court. That's my prediction for 2025.
Great. Great.
Oh.
Okay, well, on that wonderful note, this has been Oh Brother News. I'm Gabe, he's James, and we'll be back every Friday
Friday.
till they shut us down. Well, by the time I publish it, it'll probably be Friday.
Okay.
I don't know. We're still in the pre-video figuring it out phase, but we're coming out of alpha, so I don't know. I would say for this one won't be up until Friday. So if you're hearing this, it's Friday.
All right. All right. Well,
All
nice
right.
talking. Hopefully, everybody has some fun stories to Google. Hey, I sent a link in our chat here. I highly recommend recommend clicking on the link to watch some Ukrainians running over Russians and North Koreans. It's pretty good entertainment.
It does sound fun. I will try to attach that to the podcast. See if I
All
can
right.
figure that out. Cool.
Newsweek. Thanks. Shout out to Newsweek. All right.
All right.
Adios.